Hello, you guys. Happy Tuesday.
Hello.
How are y'all?
Hello, everybody. Nice.
Gosh. Okay, let's not advertise that too much.
Hey, you got to
We're on, babe. We're on YouTube.
Exactly. Coors Light will see it and be like, "Hey, we want markets." Bass Pro and Coors Light, come on.
All right, you guys. Well, we have an amazing show tonight. We have two, not one, but two special guest co-hosts with us tonight. I had a wonderful conversation with one of them, Tilly. She is absolutely amazing, very talented. And we also, I decided to go ahead and invite her husband as well. So I'm going to introduce them and we'll bring them on out. Give me 1 second. Sorry, so I can see what I'm reading. All right. So welcome to the Coven of Curiosity Podcast, everyone. Tonight, we have a pleasure of welcoming two very special guest co-hosts, Tilly and her husband, Artemis Treadwell. Tilly is an author, speaker, teacher, paranormal experiencer, and creator of Enumary Arts, whose extraordinary journey has included encounters with the Fae, the Glimmer Man, UFOs, strange night crawlers, time anomalies, and other unexplained phenomenon. Together, Tilly and Artemis are joining us tonight as we venture beyond the veil and explore the mysteries that live somewhere between the seen and the unseen. Please give a warm Coven welcome to our special guest co-hosts, Tilly and Artemis. And if I can get them on stage, there we go. Hi, guys.
Nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you guys doing? Did I say the name right?
You got it.
I usually jack up people's names.
Well, that's okay. You got his name correct, but you did kind of butcher my business name.
I did?
But that's okay. That just means I get to brag about it a little early. So I'm Tilly Treadwell. I am an esoteric exorcist. I'm an author, teacher, and a digital artist of many different types now. And I've just gotten into singing. So I've dropped a few singles. They're over on Facebook. Cindy had the pleasure of enjoying one. But today was a really big day, and I'm extra happy to be here because I run Intermediary Arts, and on my website now, my very first magazine edition for Intermediary Magazine just came out. And we had a midnight party, so all of the pre-order people, by party people, they got to enjoy it at midnight with me, and then everyone else got it today at noon. Also, the Halloween overlay for my brand new Halloween edition of the website came out. There's a fun little game on there. If you win a prize.
Okay, I got to go back on and play then. Because I was playing around on your website and checking things out today. And I'm telling you what, you guys, you've got to follow her and check out her website. It's in the description, in the YouTube description. And it's also on the Facebook posts, all the social media posts that I posted. So go check her out, you guys. She's very, very talented and very, very sweet and intelligent. So check her out.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. All right, guys. So we have a really cool show tonight because we have our guest, Kevin, who I'll be bringing out here soon. And he's going to tell us about his first encounter with a Bigfoot and much more. So let me introduce him. So we are honored to welcome Kevin Treu, co-host of Bigfoots of Michigan, for his firsthand account that has stayed with him for 8 years. Kevin's interest in Bigfoot is rooted on personal experiences. On August 4th, 8 years ago, while in Colorado, Kevin says he witnessed something extraordinary. A young Bigfoot carrying a live porcupine while an adult believed to be his mother stood nearby staring directly at him. The encounter changed the way Kevin viewed the Bigfoot phenomenon and strengthened his belief that there is so much more to these reported creatures and folklore and campfire stories. Since then, he has remained passionate about the subject and about the growing number of people who are willing to openly discuss sightings, evidence, research, and unexplained experiences. So tonight, we're going to go beyond the legend and hearing the story directly from the person who experienced it. So Kevin, get ready to step beyond the tree line. Please welcome our special guest, Kevin Treu. Now, if I can find him in the list here. There he is. It's so big this time. Yay!
There he is.
The man of the hour.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Kevin.
Hi, nice to meet you all.
You're nice to meet you too. And you and I have been chatting. So I got some of the story. I kind of already did little tidbits, but so take us back to that time on August 4th in Colorado. What was that all about? What did you see?
Well, where do I begin? I'll try to recall it the best that I can, considering it was 8 years ago. Maybe if I glance and look at the picture, it'll all pop up because that's the picture right behind me. And of course, I'm a big elk hunter because there's the elk right behind me. But, well, here we go. It all happened, August 4th, 2018. I was getting ready to do some archery elk hunting for the prior season. And I decided to get a hold of a buddy of mine. His name's Jamie. Him and I were going to head up to Salida, Colorado, which is about an hour and a half drive from where I live. Well, of course, I called him. He couldn't make it. He had to decline and not go. So I just said, I'm going to go by myself. So I did. Nothing stops me from when it comes to elk hunting. So I get there and I find this, this dirt road, which I've never been there before. I'm just looking for some public land to hunt on. And I just happened to, find this dirt road. So as I'm driving down this dirt road, I'm looking for elk tracks out of my Jeep window, just kind of, looking at the dirt road and happen to see if anything crosses some fresh tracks. Well, in the process, I happen to find some decent tracks while driving. I pull over and, of course, I get out, I grab all my gear, my GPS and all that, since I've never been there, didn't want to get lost. So I take off and I would say I followed these one tracks for about, I would say maybe half a mile. And as I'm tracking these tracks and everything, I happened to come across this abandoned camp, which was very eerie. It was, there was no sound, there was no bugs, there was no birds, there was no wildlife. The air was thick. I'm looking at this camp. It had a beautiful tent. It was blue and gray. There was a cooler. There was a clothesline with some jeans on this clothesline, and everything was oxidized, from the sun, like it's been there for quite some time. Oh. So I walk in this camp and I'm looking around and I'm like, man, this is weird. Why would somebody leave this beautiful tent, a cooler, some clothes for this long period of time? So as I'm in this camp, I'm looking around and I see these cans of, beans or corn or green beans or whatever. And the labels were completely off the cans, but there was forks and spoons inside them sitting on boulders. And I'm like, man, this is just weird. This is odd. So, I stood there for a little bit. I felt uncomfortable. Something just did not seem right to me. So I decided, I'm going to get the heck out of here. So, I decide to, walk maybe, maybe 20, 30 yards, and I'm looking for some, some other tracks. Well, I came across some, fairly, decent tracks from elk. So I decided to follow these tracks. So I'm walking, and I walk probably another, I would say, half a mile, about maybe 15, 20 minutes, and I cover some ground when when I'm hunting and I'm tracking. So as I'm doing that, I'm like, well, I'm going to sit down. I'm a little pooped out. I'm thirsty. So I decide to, sit down and drink some water and, pull off my backpack, double check my GPS. I had no weapons on me or anything. All I had was, was a knife on me. And, I decided to sit on this boulder and, getting some fresh air and just checking out nature and everything like that. So after, I would say, maybe another 15, 20 minutes, something tells me to get up and just kind of go. And in the process, I'm trying to see if I could, the geothermals and everything, because I hunt north-facing slopes. And if the wind direction is right and everything like that, sometimes you can smell elk, that are, fairly nearby. I can smell them maybe a quarter of a mile away. So I get up, I'm walking, and all of a sudden, something caught my eye up in this tree. And I initially thought it was, a bear. I mean, I just stopped in my dead tracks, and I'm like, whoa, oh my gosh, there's a huge bear up in this tree. That's your initial thought. So I'm looking at it, it was black, and I'm like, oh man, that's a massive black bear. So I'm watching it, I'm watching it for probably a good, I would say, 7 to 10 minutes, just watching this thing. Well, in the process, this thing, reached up, and I'm like, wait, a bear wouldn't do that. I've been around bears. I'm a hunter. I've come across bears many times. So anyways, this thing goes up, grabs this porcupine by the head. I never knew porcupines even hang in trees. So it leans down, and it's still standing in the tree. And this thing had to have been at least a good, 600-700 pounds. I mean, this thing was huge. And I'm looking at it. I'm like, whoa, that's not a bear. The wind started swirling, and I caught this just horrible smell. I mean, it was putrid. It was just, oh my goodness, it stunk. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what the heck is that? And it was like making me sick, I'm like, oh. So I'm watching it hands, this porcupine down. I thought maybe it just dropped it on the ground or something like that. Well, as I'm looking through these trees and everything like that, I'm watching a little scuffle going on, and I'm like, what is going on? So I noticed there was something else behind it. And I'm like, wow, was there two bears there? Well, I kept looking, and I'm like, those aren't bears, man. Is that a gorilla? What is that? This thing was tall, it was huge, and I saw part of it. It was hairy. So I froze. I'm like, man, just don't move, Kevin. I'm only about 100 yards, 120 yards from this, and, because I like to hunt to where the wind's blowing at me, so I can smell them, so they don't smell me when I'm hunting or when I'm tracking. So I'm watching this. All of a sudden, this the smaller one, is holding the porcupine, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what the is this? So and then I as I'm looking, I glance to the right, and I see this big figure sticking its head out of the tree, and I'm like, oh, excuse my language, I'm like, oh shit, what is that? I'm like, whoa. Yeah. So because I was close, the wind was swirling. I believe it smelt me. I mean, I smelt them, they smelt me. Well, just as that happened, she flashed her red eyes at me. And I'm like, what the, she was kind of in the shade. And, if you ever go to Kevin Treu and you look at my profile, you'll see the picture and everything like that. I mean, I have it all there.
Have it, and I have it pulled up here.
Okay. Well, that's where I circled it. And if you look, it was up in this, up in the tall tree. If you zoom up, there's the two right there. Okay. They were up in that skinny tall tree right above the circle. Okay.
This one?
And as I'm, that tree up there, as I'm looking at this, she stares, she flashes her red eyes at me, which, were kind of like, if you ever see a deer with, caught in the, headlights, it's kind of like that, but it was more illuminated. I mean, it freaked me out. I went into instant fear when this happened to me. And, my brain was not functioning very well. I was like, I was frozen. I started tearing up like a little girl. I was just like, whoa, what is this thing that I'm staring at? It had like a demonic looking face to it when she flashed her eyes at me. So I'm in tears. I grabbed my phone, which, was a Windows phone, and I grabbed this thing out of my pocket. I grabbed the phone, I lifted it up, and I'm like, oh, I had the strength because the phone felt like a 15 to 20 pound barbell, because I was in such fear. So I turned my head, and if you look behind the lower picture, that's the youth carrying the live porcupine. Okay, it's stepped over. If you see that log right there, right, it stepped, more to the right hand side of that log, and I could look through the trees. I'm like, oh my goodness. Just then I waited for it to come out more into the open, and just then I snapped the picture. I was like, oh my goodness. So I'm backing up, and I'm in fear. I could barely move. So I started backing up really slowly, right, hoping that I wouldn't fall backwards or trip or anything. Well, they stood there, they stopped, and they paused, and they looked at me for I don't know, maybe 30 seconds. And I'm like, so I back up. I'm like, oh my gosh, please. So I turned around, I waited for the small one to walk, as soon as you see those two big, massive rocks right there, it kept walking to the left. As soon as it disappeared, the mother, she moved her head backwards. I didn't stay there to know where they went or what. I took off running. I mean, I've never ran so fast in my life. My heart's a pounding. By the time I got to my truck and everything like that, my Jeep, I hop in the Jeep, I drive down the road. I almost flipped my Jeep because I was going so fast down the dirt road. And I slammed on the brakes. I pull over, I turn it off, and I'm in tears. I'm sweating. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I just see? What did I just capture? So I sat there for a little while trying to gather myself and wipe the tears off me, because my brain just was just like mush, I'm like, that was not a gorilla. That was not a bear. This thing looked demonic. It flashed its eyes at me, and, bright red. So I'm like, you know what? I got to go back. I just have to go back, So I went back, and I sat there and I waited about a good hour. I'm like, maybe this thing is gone, So when I went back, I went to that exact same spot, and I happened to catch the footprint. And if you go to, Kevin Treu, you'll see the footprint and everything like that. It was a big, huge footprint in some dirt. And I decided, I need to film this. So I filmed it. I only caught it like maybe 6 to 9 seconds. All I wanted was just, the footprint. I got it, went back to my Jeep, called a buddy of mine, the gentleman that was supposed to come with me. And, I call him. Luckily he answers. I'm in tears, I'm crying. And he says, Kevin, what's going on? What's wrong with you, man? And I'm like, dude, you're not going to believe me. I go, I just saw something. I don't know what it is. It looked like a gorilla. I go, Jamie, it flashed its eyes at me, man. He says, man, you don't sound good. I'm like, no, I don't. I go, I need help. I go, I don't even know where I'm at. He says, you're in Salida. And I'm like, yeah, that's where I'm at, you know? And I go, can you talk to me? You know, I go, just stay on the phone with me. Talk to me. I'm going to need help getting back home. So he stood on the phone with me, and he coaxed me all the way back into Colorado Springs. And for the longest time, I didn't know that I forgot that I even snapped that picture. You know, I ended up going to work, you know, and, you know, the next day, I didn't want to be alone. I couldn't sleep. I was up all night. You know, I get to work, you know, and I'm pale white. I'm sitting on a curb. The CEO of the company, he goes and asks me, what, you know, something's not right with you, Kevin. What's going on? He takes me to his office, you know, and the door's halfway open. And there's a lot of coworkers, a lot of people talking, and, you know, Kevin's, you know, saying that he saw like a Bigfoot or something in the woods. He doesn't know what it is. So I showed my boss, you know, I'm like, here's the picture, man. This thing was carrying a freaking porcupine. And, you know, he didn't believe me at first, you know, and he says, man, he says, you're shaky and everything. I'm like, yeah. Well, a lot of mechanics, a lot of people heard what was going on. Soon as I get out of his office, there's a big circle around me. And, you know, I had a bunch of mechanics saying, you know, Kevin, what, you know, are you crazy? What's going on with you, man? Are you on drugs? What's, you know, I'm like, no, man, I don't do that stuff. So I'm like, well, here, man, I'll show you guys. We go into a bathroom, you know, and I turn off the lights. You know, that's how you develop film and everything like that. And 10 guys, you're in the bathroom and they look. I show them, you know, the original phone, and they're just blown away, like, oh my goodness, you know, and then they pass, you know, they're passing the phone to each other like, oh my gosh, he did see something, you know, this is only obvious. So word got out 2 days later, you know, I have these 2 military guys come to my job, and they decided to talk to me. I didn't really care for what they had to say. You know, they really didn't want me sharing the picture. They didn't really want me talking about it. And I told them, you know, I have the original. I'm the one that took the picture. I'm the one, you know, they're like, yeah, we've heard about this, you know, about 2 days ago, and somebody got a hold of us. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, am I in trouble? Did I do something wrong? And they're like, no, we're just curious, and we just want to know what happened to you. So, you know, I told them, I go, well, I really don't want to show you the picture. I go, I really don't. I go, you know, if you guys want to arrest me, feel free. You want to put me in a straitjacket, I don't give a rat's what you guys choose to do. You know, I go, but I will not give you guys the picture. I will not release it to you. You know, and they were really cool. They're like, no, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But, you know, out of curiosity, you know, if it's cool with you, would you mind, you know, sharing this, you know, with us? So, you know, I told a little fib, and I'm like, hey, man, I've got, you know, other prints of this picture and everything like that, because, you know, I was ready to hand them the original picture, the original phone and everything. And that was the only copy I had and everything. So they were nice enough. We talked about it, and I gave it to them not too long ago. You know, ended up talking to the Division of Wildlife. They didn't deny it. You know, they're like, you know, well, what can you say? I've got proof. I've got the picture. I've got the footprint. Got to the point where, you know, the next night I started having major nightmares. I just kept seeing it in my head over and over. And
Right.
I had to stay, you know, I had to stay with my parents. It lasted about a month. So luckily, you know, I had my parents as my supporters and everything. My father
Right.
wanted the picture, and, you know, I did show my parents, and they were blown away. And I told them exactly what had happened to me. You know, my mother, you know, she wanted me to retire from elk hunting. Luckily, my father, he's a hunter himself, and, you know, he convinced my mom, hey, you know, chances of Kevin ever seeing something like that is like winning the lottery, you know. So, you know, word got around, and it got to the point where maybe a month later, it put such a toll on me that during that time, I ended up having a heart attack after this had happened to me. A slight heart attack. My body went half numb. It put such a toll on me. I ended up, in the hospital and everything like that. I had to go into surgery on my legs because it led to blood clots. But while I was up there, I heard them whistle. I heard some whistling going on, and I think that's what initially made me go that direction. I thought, well, were those people out there? What's these whistles going on? So, that's when I decided to stop, and that's when something caught my eye up in that tree. And to this day, because I'm part of Bigfoots of America podcast show, host Brian Sawyer, he was the one that got the word out, wrote, the very first write-up that he ever did. Got my same, like we're doing now, my podcasts on that show. So it just, word got out. I was told I was known nationally for my Bigfoot sighting and everything like that. I got very well known in a couple stores, especially out in Salida. People were just fascinated by what happened to me, especially when I ended up in the hospital. I had doctors, and nurses coming to me, and they're like, wow, this guy saw Bigfoot, he's got pictures, and I've never had so many doctors and nurses and everybody surrounding me, just taking care of me after, not too long after this had happened to me. So, I'm feeling good and everything like that. But, I just got to the point where I just wanted to learn, what it was that I saw. I'm not saying what I saw. I just wanted somebody to tell me what the heck that I saw in those woods that day. I have planned to go back to that particular area. A friend of mine has got that picture pinged, because I did send him the location and everything. He may have lost it. But I decided not to go back out there because, I was terrified. A lot of people, they say they've seen it, they're cool with it and everything like that. But with me, I don't know who else have really seen Bigfoot's face and everything like that. But like I said, the one that I came across, the big, huge one that was looking right at me, her face was demonic. And, flashing those red eyes, during the day, she was standing in, and I think the only reason why I was able to actually see him is because she was in the shadows. And a lot of people say, well, why do Bigfoot pictures, why do they come out blurry and everything like that? Well, I investigated. The reason why is because, us as humans, we have electrons running through our bodies, and, it has to do with pixels, shadows, and electrons. Okay. So at the time, I only had a Windows phone. That was our technology back in 2018. It was cool to have a Windows phone. You guys probably all know that. So, I talked to some professional photographers and stuff like that. And, and I asked them, why do certain things come out, blurry and everything like that? It goes at the lenses. I'm just asking all these questions. And I ended up talking to a professional photographer who takes pictures of models. And he says, it all has to do with daylight. That's why we have certain lighting and everything like that when it comes to taking pictures of models. So I kept doing my research and everything like that. And because, Bigfoot is a cryptoid, he's a Prometheus, they're part human. There's just different species of them. And it just got to the point where, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about, what had happened to me. Talking about it is my therapy. And 8 years later now, still talking about it, it's still my therapy. I mean, last time I ever had a nightmare, I was in the hospital getting surgery, and about 6 o'clock in the morning, I have another nightmare. So I called my mother that morning, and she talked to me and helped me out with it. I haven't had one in a while, but it got to the point where I decided to stop doing any kind of Bigfoot research. I just, I had to take some time off. I had to change my life, only due to the fact that, I had so many people that, haters and doubters and small-minded people who would come at me and saying that I'm a liar, I'm a hoaxer, I'm, all this stuff, until I actually showed them.
That happens a lot though, Kevin. I mean, there's a lot of people who have had their encounters and stuff, and there is, unfortunately, the people that are skeptics and, have a hard time believing. It's the same thing as in the paranormal world too. You're going to have people that are just not open to it, and that's okay. And that's why we have these podcasts, to allow people to come on, because I love to hear people's encounters. This is a judgment-free zone in my podcast, but I'm kind of curious. So you mentioned that you had nightmares and so forth like that. And I've heard that from others who've had encounters where it has had them, like, it affected them, not only in nightmare ways, but also in health ways, like yourself. It did affect them, especially mentally too. Some of them, the people that I've had on, it really affected them big time. So what are you doing now to help cope? Obviously you talk about it. Is there anything else that you do to help cope with, your encounter? And are you interested in seeing another one maybe? Because not all of them look so scary.
Yeah. Well, give me 1 second to answer that. What was weird is, I wasn't the only one that had seen it that particular day. There was another woman that had seen it. She reported it. She was on the news. They said that she went crazy. Her brain couldn't function either after seeing this thing. And it happened to be the exact same location and area that this happened to me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And the funny thing is, it wasn't too far out of town. I was only up in those woods, maybe about, 2 miles or so. I just got there. This happened to me, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So anyways, to answer your question, it does help to talk about it. It doesn't bother me as much. I don't have the nightmares anymore. I deal with having that slight heart attack because it put, such a toll on me. When you have nightmares, every day for a month off and on, it will put a toll on you. It'll put a toll on your mind. It'll put a toll on your heart, to the point where, I had to start taking certain medication, and because, my insurance, I made too much money or something with my insurance, I stopped taking this medication, and, it ended up leading to blood clots, and that's when I went into surgery. And, a lot of people are like, what caused this? What happened? The doctors, they found out who I was. They're like, oh my goodness, you're Kevin Treu. I've heard of you. I've heard of your story. And I'm like, oh yeah? I go, what story is that? They're like, you've seen Bigfoot, haven't you? And I'm like, all right, we can talk about it. I just don't come out to some, doctors and everything like that, telling them what had happened to me. I want to know if people know who I am. And it's only because, because I'm on, Bigfoots of America podcast show, and that's what got, me going and everything. And, that's why I'm wearing my hat. I'm a big follower. I'm a co-host and a moderator for that show. But like I said, I've spent from 2018 till now just learning about these things. I don't know everything, I go out there and I do Sasquatching myself, and I look for certain signs out in the woods. I'm more aware of my surroundings. But like I said, I tell people, you got to have an open mind to this. Bigfoot's not the only thing that exists in this world. I mean, think about it. We live in a very crazy world, from the paranormal to UFOs to, and there's too many people that have witnessed all this. I'm not the only one, but I think what makes my encounter, very interesting and everything like that is, I'm the only one in existence that have actually literally captured it carrying a live porcupine, the youth carrying a live porcupine. No man can carry a live porcupine, we all know that. And of course, if I didn't have the picture, which like I said, the picture is right behind me. And if you go to Kevin Treu, with the black BOM hat, you go to my profile, you look through it, everything is on there. Everything is legit. My picture is copyrighted. It's it was investigated, the picture. I was told it was only, I think it was like 25 to 35% blurry. And like I said, you can go to the picture, you can zoom up on it.
It's
and
very, you can see it. You can see it, like when I pulled it up. You can see the head, the body, the legs. Oh, Tilly, you have a question, hon?
Yes, I do, Kevin. Thank you very much for sharing. I think that is an incredible encounter. And it actually reminded me of a case that I was working back in the day. So I am an esoteric exorcist, and I used to work with an investigative team up in the more northern states. And we were called into a woodland property. And it was nothing to do with Bigfoot at the time. It started out with the poltergeist-like activity, objects moving and voices and shadows in the trees and whatnot. But the final straw was the father. He was out at the tree line, and he was bringing in the chopped wood or something like that, he said. And he saw what he claimed to be a between 7 and 8 foot reddish-haired Bigfoot, or however you want to term it, walk into a really large tree and disappear into the tree. And he had gotten some of this on camera. We didn't get to see all of the footage because, unfortunately, with lots of trees around, part of the footage was blocked, but there definitely seemed to be something there. So I'm really curious to ask you, what do you think about the quantum cryptids theory?
I believe in it due to the fact that, on our show that we do, we've talked about it, and I think there's pictures of Bigfoot going through certain trees. We know that they do come through portals. We've got pictures of them coming through, portals and everything like that. And I think to myself, why do people go out there and look for Bigfoot tracks and everything like that? These things are very smart, very, very smart. They don't take certain trails. Maybe some do, and because there's different species of them, they like seclusion. That's one thing that I know, and that's why a lot of people haven't really seen them. And like I said, if let's just say, for example, the government was to say, oh yeah, they're real and everything. I mean, can you imagine the chaos that it would cause this world if people were to actually know the real truth about Bigfoot and everything like that? I mean, the Division of Wildlife would probably lose a lot of revenue and everything like that. People wouldn't want to go camping. So people cover it up, and with me, I know they exist only due to the fact that I've seen them myself. And, honestly, everybody, to be honest with you, I never believed in Bigfoot. I never even knew of it. I never thought of it. I thought it was a myth, kind of almost like seeing a unicorn. And I said, if anybody sees a damn unicorn, let me know, because they probably do exist, So, so yeah, I was a doubter. I wouldn't say I was a hater until this actually actually happened to me. And that's why I say, seeing is believing. And if you don't believe in Bigfoot, then you're wrong, because they do exist. There is DNA, there is certain things, but, our government does cover it up due to the fact that I think, people still like it to be a myth, and more and more people nowadays are more interested in Bigfoot because, it's a money-making thing now. And that's how I see it. There's a lot of cast moldings. There's even museums. I mean, why would people have museums? Why would there be cast moldings? Why would it be to the point where everybody out there wants to see a Bigfoot? Okay. And, when you ask me, would I want to see this again?
Yeah.
I think about that every day, and that's a darn good question. I don't know how to answer that. Part of me would say yes. Part of me would say no. Only due to the fact that, this thing gave me nightmares. I think if I was to see it again, I would know how to handle it a lot better. I would probably just back up and walk away because, I know the males are very, very dangerous. They'll take your life. They really will. I believe they can read your spiritual being. If you have a bad spirit, you something. That's kind of how I feel. A lot of people said, Kevin, you could have died that day. You were that close to these things. They could have caught you. And I know they could have. I mean, 100 and 120 yards is not that far away from seeing this, and I think about that. Yeah. I could have been killed. I could have been killed that day. But there's a reason why I'm here. Maybe it's the man upstairs wants me to get the word out. I don't know. There's a reason why I saw it. But to want to see it again, probably not. A lot of people say I want to see it. Well, if you would have saw it and you would have saw that it flashed its red eyes at you, you wouldn't want to see something like that ever again. I mean, it was that terrifying to, like I said, like you said, you want to see it, but
I do. I do. Because they are part human. They have blood, they have organs. Just because our eye color is a different color, not all of them are mean. I know people that I've had on my show, and some people I've known for quite some time, the Shawnee Natives. They call them the Watchers. Donna Copus. She has been around them ever since she was a little girl. So, they get to know you, know, especially in the area that she's in. But so just so we can have a chance, does anyone have questions for Kevin or any comments or anything like that?
No, the story is very interesting.
I've been milling some things over in my head. If y'all got a minute,
absolutely, go for it.
Just thank you, Kevin, for sharing all of that, because that's a ton of great information. That for me, coming from my background prior to meeting Tilly, I didn't really have very many paranormal experiences at all. In fact, my life could be typified as quite average in a lot of ways. But of course, after meeting Tilly and, going on this whole journey, it has been very eye-opening, to say the least. I've not had any Bigfoot encounters, but one thing that's sticking out to me that I'm hearing you say is that, this first encounter was terrifying, to say the least. And that makes sense to me. So my background is more evolutionary biology, animal behavior, human psychology, that sort of realm. And so what I'm hearing is that, okay, so there's typically two different ways that the average person can respond to a situation when they have no prior experience or precedent for it. So, or in your case, you didn't expect it to exist at all. So for you, encountering this completely novel scenario, two different ways that humans can usually respond: either out of sheer curiosity, they want to know more, they're very investigative, nothing really seems to scare them. Those people tend not to have a super high survival instinct, and they're not really all that concerned with things that could end their life. They're just curious, which is
they're talking about me.
Yeah, that would be Tilly. That's a whole other arc. But and then there's the other half where when you encounter a novel scenario, your first concern is this going to kill me? Is this some kind of threat to my life? And so typically you'll respond by entering into the fight or flight state. And for some people, that can be so intense that they experience what you do, which is literally the prefrontal cortex, the part of their brain that's responsible for critical thinking and logic and all of that, it goes completely offline, and you go into those basic primitive fight, flight, freeze responses, and it can cascade into physiological effects down the line. So things like heart problems and other issues with organs. It can expand from that one severe incident. And of course, PTSD, all those sorts of things from traumatic instances can happen. So you're saying that you're not sure that you would want to see it again, that maybe you would know how to handle it the second time if you were. That's all tracking for me, that that first instance, even though you got a seriously horrifying response, fearful response, that the second time, because you didn't die, but did you die though, is that that phrase, but did you die though? No, you didn't die. The next time you encounter that, you would come at it with maybe less fear and more curiosity. So I'm hearing that response from you that I don't know if I would, maybe I would, but I might know how to respond this time. That's actually a very normal human response to, just experiencing first a very novel situation and then encountering it again later. So I know nobody would have wanted to have the experience I think that you did, which was being so terrified that you had to be coached your way, home from that. But normal for that sort of scenario, I would say, is probably a good way to describe it. And I know some people will say, oh, I think the cryptids did that to me. They were able to, invade my nervous system from a distance. They practiced some kind of, psychokinetic war or, telepathic warfare, something like that. And I'm personally not so sure about that, because I've had my own experiences with paranormal entities that I didn't have any time to respond at all. And it was just a knee-jerk reaction where I went from, okay, to I am in desperate fear of my life. And in those instances, I would say maybe that was a deliberate thing that particular entity was trying to elicit. But in your case, I would say a normal nervous system response to something that you've never seen before and are just probably in fear of your life. So I don't know. That's just my, I guess, 2 cents that as I'm listening to you was kind of working through.
Right. Well, I think about it, and I've had many years to think about it, and I have that question, asked to me, would you want to see it again? And like I said, part of me does, part of me doesn't. I would say there's more of the feelings of wanting to see it again, but maybe in a different situation, maybe with another person. But if I happen to come across it, it's like winning the lottery. If I was to see it again, I think I'd be more open-minded to it. I'd be able to be like, okay, well, wow, I can't believe I'm seeing this again, sort of thing. The chances of it happening to me, I'm pretty sure it probably never happened again. But, I am in the woods a lot. I'm actually planning on leaving here on my birthday, September 20th, to go and do some grouse hunting where I always go elk hunting. So, I've come across, now that I've learned a lot more, and I have seen, certain, X's up in trees really high, the bent limbs and everything. So now that I know this, and now that I've been researching, I'm able to go out there and know what I'm looking for. And if I happen to see it, I know something's around. I know that smell. That's a smell that I'll never forget. I mean, that stuck with me. A lot of people ask, what does it smell like? It smells like a sulfur, kind of like a dog rolled up in pea musk smell.
I've heard him called, yeah.
Kind of like, it's a smell that you won't totally recognize unless you see it or are able to smell it again. But it's out there. I know what I'm looking for. I'm not trying to go out there and actually find him, because my philosophy is Bigfoot finds you. You don't so much find Bigfoot. If he wants to be seen, he'll let you see him, and then a lot of people don't get that opportunity. But but I also say opinions vary. It all depends. It's the situation, it's timing. It's with me, sometimes I say to myself, Kevin, were you at the right place at the right time, or were you at the wrong place at the wrong time? So it all depends on how you look at it, and everything like that. But like you were saying, Cindy, yes, I know Donna Kopis, I know her story. There are good Bigfoots out there. There's bad ones out there. They're different species. There's gift giving, different tribes, gift giving and stuff like that. Some people are successful, but my thing is, I would love, for somebody else to be able to, a lot of people have pictures of Bigfoot and everything, but in my opinion, what makes mine stand out is, man, this thing is carrying a live porcupine. A lot of people say they see it and everything. Well, I want more evidence. I want like the Patterson-Gimlin type, filmage or picture of it. So, I've seen people try to hoax it and everything like that. Because I've got certain friends in the Bigfoot world now, especially on the Bigfoots of America podcast show, certain trackers. I've learned these things, and when you're willing to learn these things, things stand out when you're in the woods, and you get to be a little bit more cautious when you're out in those woods. Before, I'm a hunter. I pay attention to bears or whatever, my surroundings. But because this happened to me, it's like my awareness. It's like it's more intense. It's heightened. Oh yes, it totally is. So
now Tilly had a question for you.
Sure.
Because we're running out of time, so I wanted Tilly to have a chance to answer or ask a question. Or you had something to say, Tilly?
Well, he answered one of them when he was describing the scent.
Gotcha.
The other question, I would love to hear about the weather and the time of day more in detail.
Okay. It was a beautiful day. The weather was, it was actually kind of a hot day. It was, August 4th, it was still, summertime. I believe these things hunt, during that time, because that's, I wouldn't say it's hunting season, but it was around, I would say, about 10 o'clock in the morning on a nice, beautiful day. And like I said, if you look at that picture, you'll see, the sun's out and everything. The whole day, the weather was beautiful. I mean, I can see why, these things were out. I mean, why would you not want to be out on that day? So,
I was wondering, because with missing 411 and a lot of my own experience and research, weather and time of day, time of season all play a huge part in determining what type of being someone is dealing with, and what the temperament would be like, what the diet might be like, et cetera, et cetera. Were there any storms that might have been rolling in that you could see, or was it sunshine as far as the eye could tell?
That's a good question. I think there was, there was clouds in the sky, I believe. It wasn't a complete, cloudless day. But it was a nice, beautiful, probably somewhere in the 80, 85 degree weather. so that now that I can recall, because I was sweating, but when you're also in fear and your brain is, like mush because you saw what you saw, you're sweating, your heart rate is going, you're pumped, you're like, oh my goodness, so, I'm just glad that I was able to snap that picture, and I had the strength, to, and the courage to take that picture exactly when it happened. Like I said, it was all timing. It happened so fast. And then to be able to go back and film the footprint and everything, and sweating, it's just, like I said, it was a beautiful day. So thank you for asking me that question.
Julia, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Like, man, what your encounter is like, there's a couple of things. Like, number one, talking to other people. So you're doing the podcast, you're asking other people about their encounters, and you're learning from what they're also kind of doing. How's that helped you kind of not so much heal, but listening to other people's encounters? How's that kind of helped you along the way, or helping other people that have had these encounters? So there, in my line of work as well, also, we've spoken to many women that have had encounters and never been able to share it with other people. And then they've come out and said, this encounter happened to me many years ago. Have you had a lot of kind of people that have come out and shared their first experiences with you that have never shared it with anybody else before?
Oh yeah, I have people reaching out to me on my profile. Like I said, if you go on Facebook, that's where you'll find me. Kevin Treu. It's not that hard to see my BOM hat and reach out to me. Yeah, I've had people, tell me about their encounters. They want to ask my opinion. I've even had a gentleman that was in the hospital that heard about it. He asked if he could come to my room and talk to me about it. He said that him and his wife, came across it here in, I think, not too far out of Pueblo, Colorado. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's not too far from where I live. But, it helps me to learn more. I like to ask questions. I like to listen. And, it does help to talk to, other people. It helps calm my mind down. And if I can talk to somebody else, I think to myself, well, gee, Kevin, you're not crazy. You did see this. I just wanted to get the word out. I never thought, it would get this big for me. But to really answer your question, yes, it helps to talk to other people. It really does. And I love to help them, because they're like, Kevin, am I crazy? I mean, I saw this. And I'm like, you know what? I believe you, only because this happened to me. And because this happened to me, I even get people, I've had a couple military guys, talk to me about seeing UFOs, aliens. And they said, detail wise that, they've touched the skin. It's like they said it almost kind of tastes like, the touch almost feels like touching a dolphin's skin.
Are they licking the aliens?
I meant to say touch. I know.
I'm teasing you.
That's a good. I knew the good laugh. But they said that. This gentleman said that. He saw it at night, this military guy, and, he touched it. He says, it almost kind of felt like a rubbery feeling. And, and I've, he told me his experience, but it would take me forever to talk about it. And then I was at Sportsman's Warehouse. I was buying some mouth reeds because, I do call for elk, and, I'm an elk caller. I had this gentleman talk to me. He was a pilot for the Navy, and we started talking about UFOs and everything. And he said he was doing about 600 knots in these older fighter planes. Him and his co-pilot, and this UFO was flying around him. He says, I was doing 600 knots, just staying straight. The recording was on the black box. He was telling me. He says, but this thing just floated all around me super fast. He says, and my co-pilot and I, we just stared at each other and just flew the plane. they did, get a hold of, the tower and was explaining this. That was a long time ago that he told me. I can't remember exactly everything that he told me. He says, but you know what? He says, I'm glad I talked to you about this. He says, I would figured that, you would have more of an understanding, Kevin, me talking to you about it, only due to the fact that you've had a Bigfoot sighting. You're open-minded to this. And I told him, I go, you know what? I don't doubt you one bit. If Bigfoot exists, and I know they do for a fact, and there's nobody out there that can tell me that they don't. And then when he told me this, I'm like, you know what? I believe you. I mean, what's there not to believe? He looked me directly in the eye, and I could felt the heart, or what's that word I'm looking for? Truth that he was actually telling me. And like I said, I have people even right now, a couple of days ago, reaching out to me, wanting, to share their experience. And if I'm willing to listen, and I told them, I go, if you have an encounter, my friend, Brian Sawyer, he says, reach out to them, be a part of our show, feel free to talk about your experience, don't hold it in, it helps to talk about it. It's therapy for people who've actually come across, aliens to UFOs to the paranormal to spiritual stuff. It really does help to talk about it,
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So that brings to my question, because we are at the top of that hour, and I know it's late on the East Coast, so I don't want to keep people on for much longer. So with your encounters and the stuff that you shared tonight, how would you help someone else with talking about their encounter? What would you say to them to encourage them if they were very hesitant? Because some people do get very hesitant to come out because they don't want to be looked at as being crazy or insane or have like a mental issue. I know it took me a long time to open up about my paranormal experiences. What would you tell someone to encourage them?
I would just say, it's either you keep it to yourself and let it eat you up, or you talk to the right person that is willing to listen to you and is open-minded. A lot of people are Christian people. I would say, have faith, believe in yourself, know your self-worth. And, a lot of people, they'll go to a therapist or whatever. I'm here to talk about it. For the longest time, I didn't want to release my picture. I didn't want to talk about it. I just, the only people that I was willing to talk about it was my family, because they were my biggest supporters. But, I would say, what? There's a lot of people that like to keep their identity quiet.
Sure.
I thought that way about me. I was like, man, I don't know if I want to put myself out there. But I got to the point where, you know what, Kevin, I don't care what people think or say. You have evidence, and if you have evidence and you can prove it, I say go for it. I did. But if you don't, you know what? I feel like it's still best to talk about it. Get it off your chest. Don't let it eat you up, because it will eat you up, So I would say find the right person that you feel comfortable talking to, that will believe in you and trust in you. I did, and it was hard for me. I won't lie. I didn't know who I could talk to, who I could trust, who's going to laugh at me, but I did. And look at me now. I'm on this podcast still talking about it, because I just got to the point where, what? There's always going to be somebody out there that doesn't like you. There's going to be somebody out there that is jealous of you. I'm not looking for fame. I'm not looking for any of that. I just want to be truthful. I just want, people to know what I came across. And like I said, I just want somebody to tell me what the heck I saw out in those woods. I'm not going to tell you what I saw and say, oh yeah, it's a Bigfoot. Well, I tell everybody tells me what I saw. So I'm like, okay, I must have saw a Bigfoot. Are these things a myth? Are these things really real? What truly are they? until I've, taken all this time to actually learn and talk to other people about it. Because when other people talk about it, it's got to be true. It's got to be real. There's too many people out there that have witnessed it. So I would say definitely talk to somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody have any closing questions or closing comments for Kevin at all?
No, I thought the story was very interesting. I mean, I work with Russell Acord, and all the events I go to, I hear all the stories that people tell of their encounters. And I don't doubt a single one of them. You can't deny somebody what they say they saw, especially when you have physical proof to back it up. I listened to all of them. I say there was one that I doubted. This guy was a little out there. I mean, he was getting argumentative with Russ, and I had to step in and pretty much tell him to go pack sand and leave. Yeah, he was just, he was a little out there. But no, I don't doubt any of the stories. You can't tell somebody you didn't see something if they saw something, especially when you got the proof to back it up.
Well, not necessarily if you don't have the proof. You can hear it in their voice.
That's right.
You can
Emotion.
hear it when they're telling their story. Some people still get choked up and start crying.
Right.
You can hear the rattling of their voice, when they're trying to tell the story. Sometimes it chokes them up. Sometimes they get afraid to, they'll show that emotion of fearfulness because of what they encountered. So
Kevin, would you say it was like buck fever when you first saw it?
Pretty much. Like I said, a lot of people say, when you first initially see this, you're not taught this. So your brain automatically goes to what you've been taught and what you've seen before. Like I said, I initially thought, it was a bear up in a tree. And this thing was like the biggest bear I ever saw until I saw it reach up with a long arm and grab that porcupine. And I'm like, bears don't grab porcupines like that. So the next thing that your brain will switch to is, oh my gosh, that's a gorilla, because that's what we were taught. That's what your brain knows. But when you see it and you smell it, you're like, okay, this is, more senses come to you. And then, when it flashes its eyes, well, heck, that's not a bear. That's nothing that you've ever seen in your life. So your brain goes into a different mode.
What I call error 404. You don't have programming for that site, so you kind of
Exactly. So my initial thing was, okay, I'm going to tear up because I can't determine what I'm looking at and what I'm, and my sighting was long enough, for my brain to go a little whack, because, a lot of people say, well, mine was only 30 seconds. Mine, on the other hand, mine was long enough. Let's put it that way, from about 5 to 7 minutes staring at this thing. And then when it turned and it gets down the tree and I'm still looking at this, trying to determine what it is. And then when it looks at me, I can see its face and how demonic looking it is and everything. Like, for example, you can go to this picture that's literally right behind me. You can grab an iPhone, and it'll actually pick up face detection on the mother and the youth. So that right there tells me a whole lot when a phone can pick up face detection on the mother's face. And I filmed it. I've got it somewhere. I should put it out there on my Facebook, on my profile of my picture being analyzed and everything like that. So yeah, like you were saying, it will play a little bit of a toll on your brain. Not so much seeing it, but a lot of people can't say they've actually seen the eyes and what I saw. It's because I saw it long enough. And when you see something long enough, it will take your brain to a different level. And like I said, it took me a while to overcome this. Luckily, I have a lot of supporters. I thank my mother and my father for just being there, and my sisters just supporting me and saying, Kevin, you're not crazy. You have evidence. And for the longest time, I thought I dreamt all this up. I thought it was all a dream. I'm like, wait, did this really happen to me? Am I dreaming this? Is this in my nightmares? So I have to determine what's the nightmares, what's the dream, and what really happened to me. So I got a hold of my buddy Jamie, and I'm like, man, did this really happen? I called him on the phone, a few months later, even a year later. We talk about it every now and then. He says, yeah, Kevin. He says, you called me. You were crying. You were in fear, man. You were scared. He says, and look, he says, you have the picture. You have the footprint. So it did happen to you. It literally happened. It's not a dream, right? So there we go. And if I didn't have the proof, really quick, if I didn't have the proof, I think it'd be really hard for me to talk about it. I would probably keep it to myself. I'd probably take it to my grave. But because I have that proof, I'm willing to talk about it, because I don't have so many people coming at me like, oh, you're full of crap. And I've got my haters and my doubters, but it's slowed down because I have the picture out there. And when you see it and you zoom up, you're like, okay, this guy's legit, right. And, I, like you were saying, my throat, I was choked up. It was hard to talk about, but because this was 8 years ago and I've talked about it to hundreds upon hundreds of people, that it's like, I'm able just to talk about it like it's anything else.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin, so much for coming on and sharing your experience. Everybody on the Coven loves to hear people's experiences, as well as Tilly and so
Artemis.
Artemis.
Sorry, she got all stumbled up.
That's all right.
I get nervous with names. Sorry.
Just repeat it 10 times and then it will embed inside of you.
Babe, that's why I got you.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's been a pleasure, you guys, having you guys on as a guest co-host. I hope you guys had a great time. But I know it's time to wrap. We went over an hour and 13 minutes. Kevin, can you please tell our audience that are still watching, what is your handles and how can people get a hold of you?
Well, you can reach me on my profile. It's Kevin Treu, Treu. I'm on Facebook. Like I said many times, I'm the gentleman that's wearing this black BOM hat. You can find me at Bigfoots of America podcast show, host Brian Sawyer. You can find my other episode on episode 15, episode 29, the Christmas special on Bigfoots of America podcast show. Just look for the BOM hat, Kevin Treu on Facebook. Feel free to reach out to me. Say hello. I love talking Bigfoot. Feel free to pop on there and look at my profile. I'm also a hunter. I'm also a mixed martial artist. That's what I love doing. But yeah, feel free to find me on Facebook. And I appreciate all of you. You all my friends. I love you all. I appreciate it very much for being a part of the show and just being able to tell my story. And thanks for your guys' advice. And it's been my therapy also to talk to each and every one of you and share the stories. Thanks, Tilly, and
thank you,
and everybody else for asking me those questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And Tilly, you guys want to share your guys' contact or handles if you'd like to share?
Yes, absolutely. You can find us. We share a profile actually over on Facebook. Just search for Tilly Treadwell. You'll find the only verified profile. That's me. And then you'll see in parentheses it says Artemis Treadwell. That's us there. Over on YouTube, though, you can find us under The Weird Walk Home. That is the name of our channel. So the website is intermediary.art, and hopefully we can get some links down in the comments below, or whatever the case may be. But there's lots to check out there. There's the hunt going on. There's the brand new magazine that I just put out, all that good stuff. Starting to release original music. So if you've ever wondered what it's like to hear me sing, you're more than welcome to check that out.
Thank you.
Thank
really
you.
good.
I appreciate that. Yes,
You're welcome.
and I'm working on a brand new show. It's called Pretty Spooky for any of my glamour babes out there. If you like makeup, mystery, murder, and more, that's coming at the end of September. So you might want to keep an eye on that as well, my darlings and my darklings. And Artemis, honey, unless you have anything to add, I think that that's it.
You always take care of it. You got it, bitch.
And Juliet, how can people find you?
I'm just at Juliet Malbs at the moment, and that's probably on Instagram, so that's probably the best place to get a hold of me at the moment. I have stuff going in the background as well, like magazines and other bits and pieces, so I will let you know.
And Richard?
The easiest way is through my Facebook page, which is verified Richard Politano. All my links are attached to that Facebook page. I'm all over social media, all the different media's things, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. I'm always there. So that's the best way for me.
And then Marcus?
So I have removed all social media, so you cannot find me. The only place you can now find me is on the podcast. Taking a stand, and I refuse to use it now. But you'll find me on the podcast. So I'll be here every Tuesday, and then the Haunted and Hunted Case Files every other Wednesday. We have a show coming up tomorrow, and it should be a great one.
And sometimes Grandpa's old hate tales, because they all want you back.
Yes, yeah, that too. I did have a great time on there.
Yeah.
Telling some stories.
Tilly is actually going to be on Grandpa's Old Hate Tales
okay.
on Thursday. Tomorrow. No,
2 days.
yes, Thursday.
Okay.
So,
Yes, and
yeah.
boy, do I have a story for you.
Ooh, I am excited. Well, everyone, thank you so much for stepping into the circle with us on the Coven of Curiosity podcast, where the mysteries, paranormal, eerie, and the unexplained are always welcome. Your energy, curiosity, stories, and open mind to help keep the coven alive. Until we gather again, walk gently through the mysteries, question what hides in the shadows, and never stop exploring the unknown. Coven of Curiosities is a safe and respectful, judgment-free community. When you enter the coven, your personal stories, paranormal encounters, unusual experiences, theories, and beliefs will be heard, because your voice matters and your experience deserves to be valued. Please rate.
What is going on with you over there?
I swallowed.
She's hitting you a beer.
Yeah.
No, I swallowed wrong, and it got me kind of choked up. Anyway, rate, follow, like, share, subscribe, and comment. And if you'd like to be a guest, please email me at covenofcuriositypod@gmail.com. And you can find me on all social medias. It's very easy to find me, either Cindy Sapp or Coven of Curiosities. All right, everyone, have a great, fantastic evening. Thank you so much for in the audience, and thank you guys for coming on. Woo-woo.
Good night.
Have a good one.
All right.
You guys